Greetings, this is John White. Okay, I'm going to read out, I've given audio recitation of my latest note, and then I'm going to do a little bit of free-form talking about it afterwards. The note is called Days of Decision, Defeating the Demon, Seeking the Way. Greetings all. In my daily awareness, I am open to my intuition. And in recent days, the need to write these words has emerged within me. I am about my mission as a spiritual philosopher, a white wizard of the internet, and in many ways have been part of a great movement leading the charge to expose great spiritual evil that has been covertly taking control of society, especially for the last few decades, with real vigour and purpose. And I have been working to defeat and replace it with a way of life so much better. But while the circumstances of my life have shaped me and made the mission of my vocation, what about the multitude and their confusion and the society around us that we have to heal and transform, making a reformation to bring human society forwards and give all of us a chance to deliver a better future to those future grandchildren? A profound purpose is all well and good, but how can others follow when they are beset by fear and confusion, asked to look at the world anew, unskilled, asked to look at themselves when that is what they fear most of all? In building and guiding this awakening, for years those like myself have struggled to reach the true inner human, locked inside the bubble of consensus trance reality, to break the spell cast by cabal vision weavers, the magi of the media casting the illusions of the medes. Small comfort, is it not, to come out of a false sense of security into the nakedness of a cold world where one does not know the rules, how to guide and how to assist. But more than that, we also know we face a spiritual foe, the dimensional consciousness that has entered through portals created by the cabal rituals and has sought to implant itself in the minds of men to dominate and control them. In a world where God is dead on the one hand and insane on the other, this world of chaos the cabal has wrought, what chance for poor humans stuck in the midst? In our understanding of the world, we have religion, the mind of God, imperfectly translated through the mind of man, written into books, made into laws, and used to impose imperfect understanding more often than not, but has led to the slaughter of millions. And we have science, the guessings of the blind, constantly tearing down its own prior assumptions, but true has led to progress. But progress that has caused just as much harm as good, perhaps more, with industrialized war slaughtering hundreds of millions and constantly threatening to destroy us all. The first speaks of a God of rigid rules, the second of a pointless universe, where rules should favour those of knowledge and power. Both are provably cabal manipulations, as this consciousness, with its true responsibility for original sin, has sought to limit and control man by circumscribing his perceptions and throttling his potential and allowing him to progress only in ways that favour increased cabal control, especially since the birth of Darwin's theory, 20th century technology repression, i.e. Tesla, and so much more. And this consciousness has used both religion and science to divide and rule, and it has been with us for such a long time. The oldest truths that have survived from the distant past of humanity, when watchers did walk the earth, are found not in documents and documentaries, but in myths. The stories strong enough to survive across the centuries from oral tradition, And these stories, which should always be considered as metaphor, with something to tell us about the heritage of our own living natures, these myths contain the closest answers we are ever likely to get to the deepest questions, accepting the invention of time travel. Of these, all in the West know the story of the Garden of Eden, of the creation of the garden by God at the completion of the creation of the earth, of the creation of Adam, the first man, of Adam's loneliness, of God's creation of Eve, the first woman, from his rib, DNA, of how they enjoyed the garden together, until the snake tempted Eve to eat the forbidden apple of knowledge from the tree, and she, in turn, tempted Adam, and how God was then angered and expelled them both. There is a lot more that could be said of this tale, and the serpent that slithers through it, a tale that is found in multiple forms, not just the Hebrew and later Christian and Islamic. But for the purpose of this article, there is one thing I would like to highlight. When Eve ate the apple, she gained knowledge of good and evil. Has anyone ever stopped to wonder what her perception was before? What changed that forced humanity's expulsion from the garden? What made us fall? Was it a simple rebellion against God that arbitrarily angered him? Or was it really something else? What was lost? And if it was found, could we return? Could we remake Eden by our own hands, here on earth? Good and evil, light and dark, left and right, duality. Teacher after teacher through the ages have been doing their best to find some way to get the understanding to grow and spread and be preserved. But it is man's divided consciousness that is man's biggest problem. The entire spiritual system of Buddhism arose to tackle man's schizoid division. We just can't help ourselves. Dividing the world into like and like not, this or that, dit or dot, blue or red, left and right. And look where this has taken us. The habit to let others do our thinking for us and then make harsh judgments based on a seeking of emotional security is the curse of man's history. What else does the Buddhist system have to say? It says that man is not his thoughts or his emotions, and that asleep he is enslaved by them, but that man's true awareness is an eternal, omnipresent now that exists in the silence between thoughts and feelings, not within them. That we are the inner eye, the watcher of our own self, but in our confusion mistake stimulus for purpose and never awaken to and take responsibility of our own power and potential. It seeks to rectify this by meditation, emptying the mind and allowing awareness to increase of our consciousness within. In more modern times, David Icke has described human life as the astronaut, mistakenly thinking he is his spacesuit. And now, as we enter these days of decision, where massive change is now inevitable, and it is up to all of us to be part of defining the shape of that change, these simple and powerful shifts in perception are more important than ever. And also, this knowledge is massively more available. The question is, who will take on this challenge to do the inner work? and what will stand in their way. What brings us to the matter of the demon. When man is asleep, he is divided against himself. The ego lives in a bubble within the mind, but walls itself off from much of the mind to do so. This walled off part becomes the shadow self, the repressed subconscious, all the things about ourselves we don't like and don't want to face, because the ego always wants to feel okay about itself, and thus represses and fears the unpleasantness of naked awareness of truth. This leaves big areas of human potential untapped, and the hard truth is, that means those areas are liable to be taken over by an outside force, the same as hacking a computer. There are those, especially who have allied themselves too closely to the cabal and its service to self agenda with reptilian tendencies, who end up opening themselves more and more to outside influence, and they may indeed become possessed. The worst of them, who are totally sociopathic, even welcome that. But these elite Kabbalists then create a society that reflects and magnifies their energy. Schizophrenia is a sane reaction to an insane world, wrote the crusading psychiatrist R.D. Laing, who recognized the toxicity of man's society was driving minds insane and keeping them that way. Social injustice, inequality, suffering, pain, death, all these vibrations please the demonic. The pain of the powerlessness allow them to hoover up energy they are adapted to use, and there are those I know who are very concerned. How does mankind escape this trap? The good news here is that although we have a demonic infestation problem on planet Earth, awakening and returning to our original unity consciousness closes the portals and throws the demonic out, back into its own dimension, where it best belongs. It has no business here. It should never have been here. Something, a long time ago, went wrong with the divine plan for this planet, and these days are the correction. Always remember, man was created with free will, the ability to make his own decisions and be responsible for them. That includes responsibility for imagining and manifesting both the good and the bad. No matter how evil someone has become, no matter how corrupt, there is always the choice to stop. But the ego lies to us in all sorts of ways to protect its cocoon of illusion. Every time we tell ourselves we have no choice, we simply have choices we will not choose, often for fear of being in too deep to do things another way, or unable to accept the simple choice to stop what we are doing when ego drives us along. But however lost in Maya we are, free will is always the fundamental nature of humanity. It only needs the realization of awakening, and anyone can free themselves by rededication to the energy and balance of the divine source. Yes, anyone. And very few humans are truly possessed. The vast majority are oppressed, vampirized by demonic vibrations entering their sleeping energy forms via subliminal cabal programming that speaks to the unconscious mind, And these demonic energies are helping themselves to a good slurp. And this is how, trapped in the ego's mental and emotional construction, unknowing and without the will to break free, humans become depressed and or mentally agitated, and why we now have a world filled with people who are mentally ill, unable to support a balanced psyche without assistance, usually drugs, whether prescribed or self-medicated. But again, it is awakening that changes this, an awakening being fostered by more and more individuals in our current times, setting living examples of standing in consciousness and for awakening. And we will see this more and more, faster and faster in the times ahead. To truly awaken is to face oneself. To face oneself is to defeat the demon and become free to live in God consciousness, in the eternal divine now. Ultimately, for each of us to free ourselves is to free the world. It all seems so simple, really, doesn't it? What we have to do to make it right, sounding simple, is not the same as being simple or easy, because it's a struggle, and we won't fully succeed with our internal evolution to a true human consciousness on our first try. We work at it as we go through life. We accept we are up against a cabal that has spun its illusions deep, and there is a lot of work to do. But if we are kind to ourselves, accept ourselves, start to believe in ourselves, we can stand on our own feet. No, this is not an easy answer. No real answer ever was. Spiritual wisdom cannot be given like sweeties simply because people have need of it. People must first always open themselves to receiving it by deciding to turn their lives around, and that is when everyone needs as much support as they can get. And in these days, that support is there. So many are successfully raising their energy that the cabal is now in serious trouble like never before, and humanity is headed towards freedom. And energies do much good being directed in that way. Whoever you are, no matter the choices you have made, the pain you have suffered, the anguish that you feel, the temptation of whispers to the ego through the demonic infiltrating the id, you are not lost. You are not forgotten. Still your thoughts, still your emotions, learn to see them from the stillness, and you will discover the path to healing, transformation and change. The true loving oneness of the Creator really doesn't judge. And those who embrace that healing balance learn to express love and understanding and make those living energies the centre of their lives again. While that is harder for some than others, it is always possible for all. Free will, it is about the choice. But we must judge ourselves and truly face ourselves. Own all of ourselves, even the bits we cannot stand or care to like. And then, through the truth of self-knowledge, we will set ourselves free. the renaissance of free humanity. And those few still caught in the trap of the demonic, after the majority have made the great shift, will be helped, whether they can succeed or not, for the rest of their days, while prevented from enacting the direction of demonic consciousness from harming others. A hard topic. I have tried to face it bluntly, to give some insight, as I said, because intuitively this feels like perceptions I need to pass along. Let me know if it helps, and share your own perceptions and discussion in comments on the article. With love for all, John White. Okay, so I'd just like to try and share some thoughts on why I wrote this note and what I'm hoping that it communicates. I have been an activist for many years, and in recent months in particular, my activism has led me to particularly take on the cabal directly in terms of my solid support for the campaign for Pedogate Truth, which is now absolutely having very serious results, and we're seeing arrests of people who are part of these cabal networks in the United States, and we're having more and more exposure of these networks around the world. A massive exercise in citizen journalism and activism is going on in the background of wider social change, as American society is trying to reconcile itself to the deep divisions that the fake news manipulated media have created by spreading fear and panic over the last few years. So this sense that we are entering now the days of decision, the days of the Great Awakening, I believe that now it is becoming very evident to people that this is in fact true. And as was pointed out some years ago, there are some timing issues with Gregorian calendar, and in a very real sense the timing in terms of the spiritual unfoldment of the universe is that what was expected from 2012 was really due for 2016, and now we have seen that, and now 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 up to 2021 is a nexus now of history. And there are stories we know from history. We know, for example, the story of Christ, or the story of Muhammad, or these other great points of intervention where powerful new narratives have arisen that have driven the human race forward. Well, this is one of those times. This is a very important time. And the consciousness that we have infesting planet Earth, this has been going on for a long time, far too seriously long enough. And humanity's future does depend on some form of transcendence, of some form of stepping beyond the limited, controlled, egoic creatures that we have been in many respects manipulated into becoming, and in reclaiming the birthright, the strength, the power, and the total responsibility of our true divine selves. To me, these things are very close and very comparable, because I have been on this journey through the 44 years of my life, and I have been through experiences which have driven me, and I have driven myself, and I have been very hard on myself over the years to become who I am today. But I did all that because I knew there would be this time when people like me, and me as much as I'm around to do it, have got a responsibility to try to help everyone as much as we can, and as much as making that change happen, as much as making 2016 happen meant many years of activism, which is effectively dualistic to sort of stand against globalism and for free society. But the intention was never to be caught in dualism. It is simply to create this window, and all of the labels, all of them, all of those identities which are out there, they are all illusions in that they are all choices, and we can see what we have in common just as easily as we see what we have apart. We can choose to come together for common cause just as easily as we can choose to divide and ultimately hate. Freedom or fascism? Again, the phrase is dualistic, but its intent is to convey that the real dualism is between balance and harmony and oneness, and imbalance and destruction upon the other, and that the extremes of polarity, the extremes of living with a dualistic consciousness in a body which, in all fairness, was altered by interference a very long time ago to create this split vision inside ourselves. But that because we are infinite consciousness using the vehicle of this body, no matter what has been done to tamper with the original trajectory that the human destiny would have followed, with consciousness we can correct, we can rebalance, we can make it right, we can recreate Eden with our own hands on earth, and we can become the caretakers of that garden and create a future where the suffering, the horror, the awfulness of modern society, the crushing of souls, the bulldozing of hearts, the repression of creative joy and individuality, everything which is wrong about how the system abuses human beings, we can alter, we can change by taking responsibility at last for our own power and becoming spiritual adults. And it is our spiritual adulthood where, although it is good to open ourselves to pray, to look to bring the rebalancing energies of the cosmos to shine upon us, to help us, it is when we master ourselves that we become our own lights, our own conduits for the higher vibrations. And when we do that, there is no longer a place for shadow to insidiously lie within us. And we can become free as we become powerful, as we become spiritual adults, and as we truly take up applying wisdom to knowledge and becoming the true humanity that we have within. Because if we do not, if we fail, if we do not change course, if we do not win this spiritual struggle, then humanity's future is not going to end up as a happy one, because ultimately all animals bred for the food of others end up only one way. And we must now awaken and seize these times to set a different course for the next age of our journey. Couple of other things about the article. When I write things, it's very hard to ever give a complete picture. So, for example, in the article I talk about religion, and I talk about how religion has been used as a form of repression and a form of control, a lot of it in ignorance, and has caused many deaths. And all of these things are true. But I also talk about the truth that is to be found through all religions, because in so many ways, to truly embrace the greatest truth of this life that we are all experiencing is to embrace the paradox that arises when a unified consciousness seeks to be understood from a polarized point of view. Because it's not that things are good, it's not that things are bad, it's that things are good and bad. The question is, how balanced are they? And is the imbalance so bad that it becomes destructive and harmful? So, although people have plenty to be angry about with religion, it still remains a valid spiritual path to union with the very living Word of God. Even though it is an imperfect translation, it is a translation, and it is a route, and it is a map. So unlike others, I am not angry with religion. At the same time, I don't embrace religion as a necessity, because I am more experiential, shamanic and immediate in a living awareness of being an awakened being in as much as I can be, in naked awareness and humility under God. And you know what? If you can stand there, you can stand anywhere. If that's enough, then everything's enough, and you can do anything, and you can look your whole potential. So I wanted to say that about that. Also, science, I happen to believe that in terms of making the most of this three-dimensional reality, the scientific method, the rational method are very important. And that in order for humanity to become the best of ourselves, we do need to master our spirituality and our science and balance them together with wisdom. So even for all the harm that science has caused, it is an essential part of humanity's future, especially now that there are 7 billion of us upon this world. And that the only reason the population of the earth has risen to 7 billion is because we have exploited oil to create fertilizers and pesticides to grow foods. So humanity doesn't have the luxury en masse now of rejecting science. Instead, we must master science, and we must make it work for us. The same as we must master politics, we must master economics, and we must master religion. We must make them all work for us, and we must make all of them cease to be tools to enslave and repress us. And we can do that. So, with those closing thoughts, I would just like to thank everybody who's supporting my work on an ongoing basis, and the things that people do, the little interactions that I have, and they end up meaning so much because they spark my creativity, and I get to produce pieces like this, and I hope that this piece helps everybody. So with that, I shall say goodbye. John White, out.